Well, hi everybody, and good to be talking to you all today. And I'm actually going to be talking about something that you may have heard about, you may be very familiar with, and that's the idea of the Python programming language. Now, JD set me up very well here because he showed some Bayesian analysis there, and the code that he showed behind the Bayesian analysis was actually Python. So I'm not the first person to show you Python today. But what I want to do is to give you a very high-level overview of what Python is and why you might care about it. Now, I'm going to firstly say, don't panic. It is true, I'm a propeller head, I'm a total quant geek, and this is my playground, if you like. However, I recognize that for a lot of you, you may be working in different parts of the insights industry. And so therefore, this is going to be very gentle, but what I'm hoping is that by the end of this presentation, you will understand why in the insights industry, we have to care very deeply about Python and the capabilities that it's bringing to us. So why am I talking at an insights webinar about a programming language? Well, if I were to ask you, what are the big technology disruptors in insights and market research? You would obviously say artificial intelligence and machine learning. You would obviously say automation, and I would say obviously because that's what we're talking about today. And you'll probably also say things like data integration, the fact that we're beginning to bring in data for insights from everywhere. You would probably talk about unstructured data, the way that we have to work with social media, the way that we have to work with video, we have to work with audio, large-scale text analysis. You might talk about the Internet of Things and how that's changing the way we can measure what respondents are doing and what people are doing for real within their houses. You might talk about neuro and biofeedback. All of these things are the things that you're hearing at the conferences that your company is probably working on as you go forward. And what I'm going to say to you is one of the things that ties all these things together is if you dig underneath the covers and look at how are people doing these things, not just talking about them, but actually doing them, then the answer is they're probably using the Python programming language underneath. And so it becomes very important as we think about what we're doing within the insights industry, that we actually start to get some of these new tools. And my contention is that all of us, or all companies within the industry, whether you're in qual or quant or whatever, whether you're on panel side, whether you're on the vendor side, all of these things require new tools. And one of the most important new tools that we have is the Python programming language. Now, it's not just me saying this, and unless you've been under a rock, you would have seen articles like these all over, okay? The rise of Python over the last 5 years has been stunning. The way that it's come up from being very much a secondary scripting language to something that is really front and center. And the importance for us is the key thing here, it's really the #1 language of data. And that's the thing that I'd like to really emphasize here. Python has very much become the #1 language of data. And so within insights, as what we work with is data. And again, I want to stress that this is not just about quant, okay? This is about qual. If you're generating video, if you're generating audio, if you're taking verbatims, all of this has to be managed and analyzed. And Python has become the #1 language of data for that. Now, I just want to head on very quickly. Some of you may be sitting there and say, well, what about R? If you've probably heard about Python and you've probably also heard about R. I'm not going to talk much about R today. R is an excellent statistical language. It's definitely part of the toolkit of all research, all hardcore statistical research at the moment. I use R when I need to. So I don't want people to think, you'll sometimes hear this set up as a little bit of a battle between the two, Python and R. They're actually quite different. They're used in different areas. R is excellent, absolutely superb, not what I'm talking about today, but I just wanted to say that before people got funny about that. So what I'm going to do very quickly, I'm going to tell you 5 things that I believe all of you need to know about Python, some of which you may already know, but if you don't, hopefully this will be something that will help you learn a little bit about Python. I'm then going to give a very quick demo about the kind of things you can do within Python, and then obviously I'll let you know how to get started if you haven't already. So the first thing you need to know about Python is it's a full spectrum language. And that's a term that people use quite a lot about Python. What it means is it can be pretty much used for everything, okay? There are certain cases where Python is not the right language to be used, but for many, many things, it's an excellent language. Most of the big, or many of the big web properties that you use, whether it be YouTube or Reddit or Instagram, they're based on Python, and they're either got Python in the back end or they're actually using Python to actually deliver the service directly to you. Dropbox was written in Python. It's a complete Python program if you've ever used that. Much of Google, and in particular Google's TensorFlow, which is the core of artificial intelligence for many people at the moment, TensorFlow is driven from Python. And you'll see this funky little snake sitting on a chip. Even down, this is the MicroPython logo, even down to microcontrollers for the Internet of Things. And if you or your children have Raspberry Pis, you will know that with the Raspberry Pi, Python is the educational language that is being pushed there and is the official language for teaching on the Raspberry Pi. So it really works from the very largest right down to the very smallest. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you'll hear is batteries are included, and this is probably the main reason that Python has become so popular and so powerful. What this means is no matter what you want to do, there's a Python library for it, and it's actually quite incredible. Whatever you want to do, whether it's you see beautiful soup that's for web scraping and getting information off the web, Pygame for writing games, of course, Django, which is a web framework, which is what a lot of those web services that I mentioned earlier are actually running on top of. Whatever it is, there's probably a library for it. And this is one of the things that makes it incredibly powerful. So if I'm doing something and I need to build a neural network to get something, I can pull a neural network off some neural network code off the shelf, use it immediately within a couple of lines of code. That is really powerful, and this is really the reason why so many people are using it at the moment, because it makes building things, even very complex things, very quickly. It's very easy to get started, and this is the third thing I want you to know. And I want to encourage people here, if you are curious, get started. This is a standard thing to do, is to say, how do you write the words hello world to the console? This is a standard programmer thing. I used to write a lot of code in C#. Great language, but this is what you had to write in order to get those 2 words onto the console. This is what it looks like in Python. Okay, I think it's very obvious which is the easiest, which is the easiest to remember. It's the ability to get started very quickly is actually incredible. And that's actually one of the very attractive things about Python, is that you can get started so quickly. You can write things that do real things very quickly. And that, of course, is why it's used a lot in education as well. But it's also why it's used a lot in scientific areas, where the people who are writing the code aren't programmers. They may be astronomers, or they may be physicists, or they may be philosophers. They can still write the code. It's very easy to get started. But it is incredibly powerful. And I've just done a screenshot of a YouTube channel here, just to show this is a guy, and there are many people like this guy, who are giving 5-10 minute videos telling you how to do incredibly complex things in a 5-minute video. how to build neural nets in 4 minutes, you'll see there. It's phenomenally powerful. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's become so popular within the data science community. And the fifth thing I want you to know is it's more than just a language. There's a philosophy behind it as well. The original language was created by a guy called Guido van Rossum. And one of the things he said very early as he started to put this together and to build the team around him that were building this was that it was more than just another programming language, that it was actually a community. And this actually has turned out to be another of its great strengths. It's an incredible community. Wherever you live in the world, you can go down, you will find people who will get together to talk about Python. And it's generally very open, very inclusive. And it's one of the things that's actually really, for me, who has worked in the technology field for a long time, has been a real breath of fresh air. That it's not just the programmer bros, you know, that are doing this. This is a very open, very inclusive community, and one that actually is much more than just a technology community. So those are the 5 things I wanted you to know. Now, when we think about the batteries included, when we think about insights and data science, there are specific libraries for Python that really speak to exactly what we do. Okay, there's NumPy, which is a numerical analysis one. There's Pandas, which allows us to work with large amounts of data, and which I'm going to show you in a second. Scikit-learn, which allows us to build all these AI models. You just import scikit-learn or sklearn, and you have AI in your system. Okay, all these things, and one that's become very important is this one here called Jupyter. And I'll actually show you an example of Jupyter, but Jupyter is a very accessible way of writing code that you can then share with other people. And this has become a big part of why it's so popular, is because people have been able to share code with each other. It's become huge within the academic community. People are writing papers in Jupyter rather than writing papers now. And it's one of the reasons that's made it very accessible. So what I'd like to do, Ray, if you could hand over to my machine, I'm going to give a very quick demo. And hopefully you can see now. Yep. So I'm going to give you a demo. This is a Jupyter notebook that I'm showing you. And what a Jupyter notebook is it has cells which you can write code in, and the code will appear. So if you see, I've got print hello NewMR, okay, and just so that you know it's real, I'll add a few exclamation marks, and I can run that, and the results come out immediately. So the if any of you are familiar with MATLAB, then it's a very similar kind of model to that. So what I'm going to do in this very quick demo, I'm going to read in 50,000 news articles, complete news articles. So to do that, I first did all these imports. You don't have to worry about that. That's the batteries included part. Okay. My next piece of code, and you don't have to worry about what the code says. I just want to show you how fast and how easy it is. Here I've read in a data set with 50,000 rows with 50,000 news articles. And you see here, you can just see the beginning of each one. But these are big news articles, and these are full from places like the New York Times. You see all those in the front. Now, once you've got those 50,000 in there, you might want to ask some questions and think to yourself how you would do this in your current tools. I mean, you couldn't do this in Excel. SPSS would grind to a halt. You'd have to be using SQL or something very, very inaccessible like that. But I can just do this, and as quickly as that, it has told me the top 20 authors out of the author field, out of that. And so now let's have a look. Let's have a look at the first news article. And you see, these are big articles, okay? And if I said to you, okay, I've got 50,000 of these, how do I manage 50,000 of these? And, you know, think about what you do in your work You know, maybe these are verbatim transcripts from Qual or whatever. Well, what do we want to do? Well, let's have a quick summary. So it's actually as simply as saying print summarize. Okay, it's summarized that. Now that's still pretty big. Okay, that's for that. So let's ask for something a little smaller. And what it's done is it's gone in and using artificial intelligence techniques, it's gone in and it's found what it thinks is the most important sentence. And in fact, it turns out to be a very good summary. That one sentence is a very good summary of that article. So you see how quickly it's just done that. And I can also pull out the keywords from the article, and these are automatic. It's gone in and it's worked out itself what it thinks the most important words are. So now let's look at the titles. We've got 50,000 titles here. What are the words within the title? And just seeing a few lines of code, I can get it to go through and it'll tell me what the most common words in the titles are. And you'll see, in this case, it's got Breitbart as the one. There's a lot of Breitbart, and they actually put the word in the title. So you see there's 15,000 of them there. But you see it's very quickly gone through 50,000 articles and said, what are the most common words in the titles? And of course, you know, we don't want to just show that as a list, but actually we can actually start to visualize, and there's some incredible, very powerful visualization tools that are available. Again, batteries included, we can do that. So basically, and this is how I want to end, I want to say, you know, for you, what do you need to do to get started? And basically what I'd like to encourage you is to ask yourself, within your organization, who's going to bring these kind of skills, whether it be Python, whether it be R, whether it be the other new tools that you need in order to really do the AI and automation. You know, who's going to be the people bringing that? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be your teams? Or is it going to be a partner like a company like my own? I'm Deck Chair Data, and we do consulting to help companies who are starting to build these kind of skills within their organization. Or are you going to start yourself? And if you are sitting there thinking, I'd love to have a go at some of that myself, I highly recommend, there's this little book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. You can either buy the paper copy, which I would recommend, or you can actually download it. It's a free download off the author's website. But it's a great way to start. And somebody said earlier about the fact that we're using too many spreadsheets. I totally agree with that. If one of the things this book does, it says, how do you get beyond that? How do you start to automate some of the things beyond spreadsheets and things like that? And so that's a great way to get started if you want to get started. So I will leave it at that point and hand back to Ray, and hopefully we have a short amount of time for questions.
Thank you, Chris. That was fantastic. It will be quite a short time. There's a little bit of feedback, unfortunately. So I'm just going to check the questions there. I suspect that you may get more questions later when people reach out to you, because that will be quite a surprise to a lot of people. And as we've not got anybody else out there as well, how would you see AWS fitting the Amazon Web Services? Is that something that people should be factoring into this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one of the great things, so I was VP of engineering for a web startup back in the first bubble. And I remember that when we put together our first data center, for a very small thing, we had to spend between $3 and $4 million. And nowadays, I could get the same capabilities for $100 a month from AWS or from Heroku or any of those. And so these things are incredible. The availability of those tools, and I use a service called Linode. I also use AWS for something called its Lambda services, which are incredibly easy to use. And basically, the Lambda services allow me to run Python code for almost free, okay, very quickly and very high scale. So definitely the cloud services, the availability of those, also some of the newer forms of services, those are very important. And again, for many of us, it'll be writing Python code that we then run on those services.
And we have a room, and I'm going to just bounce one thought off you. Generally speaking, most people should not be writing code to do anything clever because there should be a library that already does it. Is that fair?
Pretty much. Basically, one of the great things about Python is pretty much what you're doing is taking code that people who are far cleverer than me or you have put together, and we're wiring it together using the Python. And you're absolutely right that for the most part, there's some very smart people out there who are putting things out there. Now, having said that, I also encourage people to get involved with creating those new libraries. So if you are doing something new, giving back to the community, and like I say, it's very much a community thing, and actually giving your code back. And that's where things like GitHub and these other open source repositories, GitHub now owned by Microsoft, of course, which was a surprise to everybody. But Microsoft are going down this route as well. So that's how the ecosystem works, that people actually give back their code, and you can go and you can pick the code up. And so yes, the first thing is not to reinvent the wheel, but to go and find the library that does what you want to do. Most of us should not be writing AI routines from scratch. We should be going and using the AI routines for our own particular domain. And that's what most of us do.
Thanks, Chris. That's brilliant.